Well, folks, we're 1 month into 2024, and hold on, this can't be right. It says here that Ben Shapiro just collabed on a new rap song. Ben, rap is garbage, Shapiro?
I think rap is garbage. I mean, that has not changed.
Yep, a little over a week ago, anti-woke rapper Tom MacDonald released a new single called Facts, featuring none other than the fact aficionado himself, Benny Shapiro.
Wet ass P-word.
Could have predicted a lot of things about 2024, but that would not have been one of them, let me tell you that. If you're not familiar with Tom MacDonald, he's an independent rapper who's been climbing his way to the top and making lots of waves along the way with his controversial music that often tackles topics like race, drugs, and wokeism. He may not consider himself a conservative rapper, but he definitely has a mostly conservative fan base, and he's made appearances on right-wing talk shows like Fox News to talk about his war against woke America.
We own the cameras, we own the lights. Like, there's no record label here to drop me. There's no sponsorship that's going to pull out. There's no endorsement deal that's going to get me in trouble. No record label going to tell me what to say. And certainly, no weirdos on the internet with 89,000 genders that are going to cancel my music.
Full disclosure, Tom MacDonald actually used to be one of my favorite rappers. Like every teenager with a healthy dose of self-hatred, I went through the whole anti-SJW phase, and while Tom's music definitely appealed to that angle, I think that he also had some deeper emotional layers to his music, and sometimes he would spread messages that I still think are valuable today, like about fighting addiction or the way that the media often dehumanizes and commodifies our existence. But nowadays, looking at Tom's music, I just feel sad, to be honest, because I genuinely believe that he's a talented guy, but he mostly just uses his music to get outrage clicks and to push a certain agenda that panders to the Fox News type audience. And so, while I sometimes still listen to his music, I can definitely no longer resonate with the message, and I don't respect him as an artist and a person in the same way that a younger me once did. But enough with all the background nonsense, let's get into the song. First off, the positives. I like the chorus of the song. I think it's solid. I think it's catchy. I'll probably get it stuck in my head. The production is good. You know, the set design is done by Tom's girlfriend, Nova, and she always does a great job. It's visually eye-catching. That's about all the good things I have to say about it. It's not much. The lyrics are not facts. We'll get to that in a second. They're lackluster in some places and confusing in others, and at times somewhat hilarious. Ben Shapiro's part is predictably appalling, abhorrent, absolute trash.
Stats, I've got the facts. My money like Lizzo, my pockets are fat. Homie, I'm epic, don't be a wap. Dog, it's a yarmulke, homie, no cap. Nikki, take some notes. I just did this for fun.
He has no flow whatsoever, and the lines are mediocre, but to be honest, I couldn't even focus on them because I was so distracted by how absolutely horrible he is at rapping, and how uncool he is as well. I mean, I would be the same way, but I'm not a rapper, and Ben Shapiro chose to put himself in this position, so I think he deserves to be made fun of a little bit, at least. Seriously, the man should be checked by a doctor to make sure that his rhythmic deficiency isn't something terminal. I've heard Ben Shapiro rap more just when he's trying to talk. It's embarrassing. The lyrics are not really offensive, mainly because they're just the same old right-wing talking points that have already been rehashed 1,000 times. But they're also mostly not facts. So let's break them down and see how many facts we can find among what I would say are mostly feelings.
They call me offensive, controversial. There's only two genders, boys and girls.
Right off the bat, nope. This one definitely fails the fact check. First of all, boys and girls. If you are an adult human who identifies as a man or a woman or non-binary, I would ask you to kindly relinquish your gender and choose one of the following options, boy or girl. Apparently no other genders are currently available. Okay, I know that that's not really fair. I'm sure that he didn't mean to indicate that adults can't have genders, but the song is called Facts, so I think we should hold it to a kind of high standard. But even ignoring that he's excluded adults from the equation, this statement still can't pass the fact check for a number of reasons. Since the 1970s, researchers and scientists in the West have been able to recognize two crucial points. 1, sex and gender are two individual but related concepts, and 2, gender is partially an internalized sense of self, which we call gender identity, and partially a social construct. And while there may be environmental and biological factors that affect our gender identity, gender itself is simply a social construct that we use to build social hierarchies off of. We attach clothing, roles, and expectations to each gender according to the time and culture that we are in. A paper written by Milton Diamond, a professor of anatomy and reproductive biology, called Sex and Gender, Same or Different, says this about the topic.
Along the primrose path of childhood, children learn something fundamental. At a most basic level, they incorporate that dads and moms are designations with very different implications. Interestingly, this is the standard pattern children incorporate even when they know these rules have exceptions. They almost always know families where it's mom who is the outside-the-home money earner and dad who stays home, and where boys are nice and quiet while girls are hellions. The basic stereotypes, however, seem somehow branded on their psyche in the everyday course of growing up. The input is from family, friends, media, religion, and even politics. And most of the middle-class society colludes, in turn, to transmit social and cultural normative expectations with essentially the same rules. As a designation of male or female, sex, with the child's increasing sophistication and learning, becomes understood as a descriptive set of terms and meanings that encompass the most common biologically accepted attributes, physical differences, of males and females. General usage of the term gender began in the late 1960s and 70s, increasingly appearing in the professional literature of the social sciences. The term came to serve a useful purpose in distinguishing those aspects of life that were more easily attributed or understood to be of social rather than biological origin. Males and females, as biological entities, were accepted as essentially similar cross-culturally, but men and women, by virtue of the multitude of different roles they played in diversified societies, were not so easily catalogued. These anthropological lifestyle differences came to be accepted as social and cultural constructs. Indeed, the term sex and gender came, for most investigators, to signify and reify these different areas of consideration. Sex would refer to biological traits, while gender would refer to social, cultural ones. In 1978, Kessler and McKenna, in their now classic work, challenged how the relationship between sex and gender might be considered. They even challenged if the two concepts were different or interchangeable. In Just So story fashion, the fact that males and females are sexually, biologically, different is what leads to the gender differences seen and manifest by men and women in their behavior patterns and roles. It is certainly understood that way by the majority of the lay public, as well as many scientists. But, questioned Kessler and McKenna, if this were so clear-cut, why do transsexuals in their pursuit of the lifestyle of the opposite sex work so hard in trying to prove to the outside world what they feel they are on the inside? In doing so, Kessler and McKenna point out that transsexuals seek to reconstruct their sex to coincide with their psychological gender. Doesn't this imply that it is their gender which is primary and their sex secondary? In demonstrating their point, Kessler and McKenna take the rhetorically clever position of accepting that transsexuals are what they say they are. A male transsexual has the body of an anatomic male, but the conviction, mindset of actually being a woman, and a female transsexual has the body of an anatomical female, but the conviction, mindset of actually being a man. Then, to rectify the dichotomy, the transsexual is seen as not wanting to change their gender, but change genitals and body. It thus appears that sex is variable and gender invariant, a reversal from the way the two had come to be considered. But the transsexual, according to our authors, then sets about learning or perfecting how to be the man or woman of mind's desire. In so doing, the transsexual proves to Kessler and McKenna that gender is a construction that doesn't necessarily follow from anatomy. Most sociologists, many psychologists, and others at the time had thought that gender was a function of upbringing and social forces. Since transsexuals are brought up in accordance with their genitals, chromosomes, and other aspects of their biology, and socially rewarded and encouraged appropriately to match their social milieu and culture, and presumably with Freudian parents like everyone else, the questions naturally follow of, where does this atypical gender desire come from? Why have transsexuals not succumbed to the same influences of social and cultural attribution that others have? They obviously haven't. Kessler and McKenna didn't follow up with that apparent question and challenge to their thesis. I see sex and gender in yet another way. One is born with a biological psychosexual predisposition that is fixed by genetic and doctrine heritage and with a propensity for certain sexual and gender patterns to be expressed. Which patterns will be expressed, however, I see dependent upon the societal and cultural mores and the degree of tolerance they allow. With this comes another concept. Every individual lives with two simultaneous versions of self, an inner private sexual identity and an outer social and public gender identity. One's sexual identity is prenatally organized as a function of the genetic and doctrine forces and is activated with development. One's gender identity, recognition of how he or she is viewed in society, develops with postnatal experiences. It comes from the general observation of society's norms and expectations and from comparing self with peers and asking, who am I like and who am I not like? With which group, males, boys, or girls, females, am I similar or different? The transsexual or travestis or homosexual or indeed everyone, male, female, or intersex, reconciles these two images and answer those questions. The transsexual or the intersex individual and everyone else has to integrate the gender attributions of society and its constructs with feelings of self. I think all do so and match these feelings with some brain template of some similar or different, which is more crucial than penis or clitoris, more central to their sense of being than is a scrotum or vagina, and more important than their familial rearing. The individual comes to identify as a member of one of those groups, boys or girls, men or women, with whom he or she feels more similar and less different. Fortunately, for most of us, these factors of brain template and sex-typical biases and inclinations it imparts are usually in concert with anatomy and cultural construction of gender. When they are not, the mind will usually rule even when in conflict with societal expectations.
Gender as a concept has always been in constant flux, and we can see many cultures, both now and in the past, that have had totally different ways of viewing and experiencing gender. An excerpt from a research paper by Aguada Gomez Soares called Societies with Multiple Genders, Reflections from Ethnography explains.
The ethnocartography of sexual diversity in different societies around the world shows that there is an incredible variety of scenarios where transgenderism, sexuality among people of the same sex, or the institutionalization of a third gender is socially integrated and accepted. Anthropological studies completed to date show that gender is a social construction in a very specific context. In this case, one of the most paradigmatic realities are societies with multiple genders. Indeed, nowadays there are societies with multiple genders, such as the Indonesian Bugis, who recognize the existence of 5 genders: man, woman, man that behaves as a woman that behaves as a man, and mixed and non-permanent identities. The Chukchi people from Siberia recognize the existence of 7 genders: masculine, feminine, 3 ulterior genders for biological men, and 2 other genders for biological women, even though most frequent are societies with 3 genders. In the Western tradition, biological asymmetry has been used to construct the Western system of cisgenerity that excludes and generates dissonances in people called transgender.
Another problem with the way this lyric implicitly conflates sex and gender is the very obvious existence of intersex people who, by definition, do not fall neatly into our binary concept of 2 distinct sexes. Being intersex is not a third sex, but rather a description of individuals who have a combination of both male and female sex characteristics, meaning that sex is better thought of as somewhat of a spectrum with male on one end and female on the other end, rather than just 2 separate boxes. And about 1.7% of the population is intersex, meaning that 1 in every 100 people are intersex, or a little over 1 in every 1 in 100 people. So you're just as likely to run into an intersex person as you are a gender. So tell me, Ben and Tom, if sex and gender are the same, and there are only 2 genders, boy or girl, what gender are intersex people supposed to be? Whatever gender you arbitrarily decide them to be based on their appearance, or a sex change operation that was forced on them when they were babies? Gender and sex are exceedingly complicated subjects, and reducing them down to a survey question with the checkboxes boy or girl does not constitute fact, but rather ignorance. Tom and Ben may feel like there are 2 genders, and that's perfectly understandable given the culture they grew up in, but their feelings do not constitute fact. The real question here is, what gender are genders supposed to be?
They can't cancel my message cause I'm the biggest independent rapper in the whole freaking world.
Sure, probably.
Claim that I'm racist, yeah, right. I'm not ashamed because I'm white. If every Caucasian's a bigot, I guess every Muslim's a terrorist. Every liberal is right.
Whoa, there was a lot to unpack there. Just to be clear, I don't think that Tom is a racist, but you don't have to be to promote bigoted ideas and to create a safe space for actual neo-Nazis and white nationalists. Just look at the IDEP situation. And I absolutely hate when people who I refuse to believe are just that stupid act as if their comments just exist in a vacuum, as if context and implications aren't real things. I mean, sure, in a totally separate universe with none of the social, political, and historical context that we have here, the statement, "I'm not ashamed to be white," would be totally fine. But come on, Tom. By saying "I'm not ashamed to be white," you implicitly affirm the entirely false ideology of alt-right racists who claim that being white is under attack in this nation. You create a sense of welcomeness and belonging for people who espouse the Great Replacement theory and who spend every waking moment pretending that everyone hates them because they're white and not just because they're racist assholes. Charlie Kirk. Also, there is no widespread belief on the left that every Caucasian's a bigot. This is just a straw man for Tom and Ben to knock down like styrofoam pins in a cardboard bowling alley. What some leftists may actually say, and which I agree with, is that we all, to some degree or another, have internalized bigotry and stereotypes born from the society we live in, which is, like it or not, a racist society. This learned bigotry may be affecting our impressions and actions without us being consciously aware of it. There isn't always a malicious intent or even any intent at all behind bigotry, which is why each of us need to be willing to evaluate our own biases and unlearn the racism that may have been normalized to us through childhood.
I don't wanna talk to folks who don't get it. Go woke, go broke, no hope is pathetic.
Yeah, as a slogan, go woke, go broke has been woefully incapable of predicting which companies will go into financial ruin and which will prosper.
Pro-choice, pronouns, pro-love, you're progressive, but you ain't pro-gun, no one to protect it.
This is just another straw man of a progressive take. Most left-leaning people aren't anti-gun, as in the majority don't believe in completely banning gun ownership, just amending the laws so that the requirements to purchase a firearm are more comprehensive. I myself have no problem with gun ownership, and I would even consider getting a gun in the future. Many of the safest countries in the world have high gun ownership rates, like Finland. But the US is not doing it right. There's no evidence that tightening these laws would endanger anyone, and there's also no evidence that stricter gun laws lead to less free nations. There are authoritarian nations like China and Russia that have strict gun laws, but there are also extremely free nations like Australia, New Zealand, the UK, the Netherlands, Germany, Iceland, Japan, Norway, and Tom's native land of Canada, all of which have stricter gun laws than the US and lower rates of gun violence and deaths caused by guns. The US ranks number 32 in the world in terms of gun violence deaths per capita, drastically worse than other rich developed nations. Just saying. But hang on, if you've been a fan of Tom like I was, then this line might make you remember another song Tom dropped 5 years ago called American Dreamz. What I perceive to be a heartfelt song, he criticizes the way that the media sensationalizes mass shooters while simultaneously drowning out the voices of victims, and the way that politicians have shot down sensible gun law changes which would prevent the deaths of children, all to continue profiting while dodging the whole issue with cries of constitutional rights.
A gun don't make a soldier with a purple heart. A gun cannot protect us if we don't know where our morals are. Students fill the classes and the graves, and you claim it's a conspiracy to take your guns away. All the while the family's torn apart and trying to ask why their son deserved to die at his desk in his class. We don't want a politician making money off the bullet holes. They're digging our grave, the home of the brave has gone up in flames. The land of the free is armed to the teeth, American dream. You think it's tragic when a shooter kill a student, but then say it's all a plan for them to change the Constitution.
It seemed like, at the time, Tom understood the argument. Actually, this song was one of the ones that made me rethink my very, very conservative stance on gun laws at the time. I guess eventually Tom figured out that being anti-woke makes more money than sparking real conversations about one of the leading causes of death of youth in this country.
Where the American flags at? Remember when people would hang those? They've been taken down, they all been replaced with BLM flags or a rainbow.
Okay, I'm calling total BS on this one. I mean, the American flags have all been torn down and replaced with BLM flags or a rainbow? Dude, Tom, have you been to America? I know you're Canadian, but don't you live here? I took the liberty, because as an American, that's something I have quite a lot of taking a couple of photos on my day-to-day excursions. This is at the local park, at the school next to the park, at the house next to the park, at the other local park, at the school on the drive back from the park. I went ahead and took a walk around my neighborhood. All of these pictures were taken within a 5-minute walk from my house. I felt very uncomfortable just blatantly photographing people's property, so I had to make it look like I was awkwardly taking selfies, and my discomfort is very visible in my expression. And I couldn't even take a picture of every American flag I saw on that walk because some of them were too far back or right in front of people's houses. I didn't want to look like I was planning the next great American flag heist by casing people's homes. And this is the notoriously liberal Washington state. Imagine what you can find elsewhere in this country. In fact, I've taken another one of those oh-so-convenient liberties and looked up a picture of our great nation-state capital. What's this? No BLM nonsense or gay propaganda? Must be hiding somewhere behind that big American flag. Come on, Tom. This is rap, Tom. You're a rapper. You're a rapper, Tom.
I'm a what?
This ain't money, cars and clothes. We ain't selling drugs, we ain't gonna overdose.
I mean, that's good. That's something I can get behind, at least. I'm glad that Dom has been open about his addiction struggles and has not promoted doing drugs as something cool. Genuine props for that, and only that.
We ain't pushing guns, ain't promoting stripper poles.
Well, you did just criticize liberals for not being pro-gun, so the messaging is a little confusing here.
We won't turn your sons into thugs or your daughters into hoes.
Look, I understand where this comes from, but you absolutely cannot call it a fact. The argument that rap causes violence is equally as unsupported as the argument that video games cause violence. Rap as an art form was a product of the environment it was born out of, not a cause of that environment. And the genre of rap was rooted in expressing the reality of a dangerous and treacherous life that left many dead far too soon. Listening to rap doesn't turn kids into thugs, but growing up in a neglectful, unstable environment with little to no support very well may. Also, daughters into hoes? Gross. It's giving me the same vibes as those overbearing dads who will wear creepy t-shirts standing next to their daughters that say things like this. Ugh.
I don't care if I offend you. I was put here to upset you. You can cry and you can scream. You can riot in the streets. You defunded the police. Now there's no one to protect you.
Okay, I don't even have the time or energy to debunk this, but you can check out Some More News' video for a more in-depth analysis of the defund the police myth with receipts and evidence. But I'll summarize the long and short of it here. Defunding the police never took place in any real or meaningful way for any real or meaningful period of time. So this is definitely not a fact. Also, the police has no legal mandate to protect us. That's not my opinion. That's not my feeling. That's a fact. This precedent was set by the Supreme Court in a landmark 1989 case about a social worker who failed to prevent a young boy from suffering harrowing abuse. A Barnes Law article says this: "Nevertheless, the court found that the government had no affirmative duty to protect any person, even a child, from harm by another person. Nothing in the language of the Due Process Clause itself requires the state to protect the life, liberty, and property of its citizens against invasion by private actors," stated Chief Justice Rehnquist for the majority, "even where such aid may be necessary to secure life, liberty, or property interests of which the government itself may not deprive the individual without due process of law."
See also a 2005 court case in which Supreme Court justices reaffirmed this decision, and this quote from policeone.com, which says, "While this desire to serve the public is commendable, police officers must understand that they have no obligation to protect any one individual unless a special relationship exists. Rather, an officer's sworn duty is to the general public," whatever that means.
Yep, that's a fact.
I hope I offend you. I ask myself what would Ben do. Let's just keep it real, facts. Don't care how you feel, man.
True, facts don't care about your feelings, but your feelings definitely care about what you choose to call facts and how you interact and interpret the raw data you encounter.
If you want my pronouns, I'm the man who don't respect.
This one is not a fact since the nor man are pronouns, but it did make me chuckle. It would be actually funny if it was satire, but unfortunately I think Tom might think this one is actually a zinger. So that's Facts, a song made up of minimal facts and mostly feelings. But don't worry, Tom the/man doesn't care if you're offended, in case you missed his shirt. Except the only really offensive thing about this song is the fact that it claims to be something that it's not, factual. And seeing Ben Shapiro rap. That was truly offensive.